Question: you wouldn't swim in the sewer, so why trash the ocean? It's a question Tom Dillingham poses as executive director of the American Littoral Society, and he raises the red flag over the growing threat to our oceans and coastlines. Tim, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning.
Let's talk about this threat to the oceans. Most people think, well, the ocean can take care of itself. It's so vast, but that's not the case.
No, it's not. Unfortunately, even though the ocean covers almost 70% of our planet, it is unfortunately very, very fragile, and it faces a whole host of threats to its health today and to the way that we use it and the benefits we draw from it. Overfishing, pollution, unsustainable development along the coastline, catastrophic oil spills like the one we saw in the Gulf of Mexico. And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the effects of climate change are now being seen on the ocean.
You know, most people probably don't realize is how many of us live along the ocean.
That's right. Actually, the vast majority of the U.S. population lives within 50 miles of the coast, and more of us are moving there, not surprisingly, given how much we all love the beach.
Right, right. I believe, what, 60% by 2014, something like that?
Yes, exactly.
That's a lot of folks. That's also a lot of lives impacted by the health of the ocean and the coastline.
Right. I think sometimes we don't make the connection as to how much of our economy and our jobs and our livelihoods are connected to the ocean. In fact, about 40% of the nation's economic activity occurs in the coastline, the counties that are along the coastline. So we not only have an interest, I think, from an environmental perspective and our responsibility to take care of the planet, but the fact that our livelihoods are often very much dependent upon the health of the coast.
Let's talk about some new policies that are, I guess, under consideration now.
Yes. Well, this year is the second anniversary of the National Ocean Policy. Several years ago, President Obama and other national leaders recognized the need for new approaches to manage the ocean and to respond to these threats that we were just discussing. So the National Ocean Policy is an attempt to one, prioritize the way we deal with the ocean and put its protection first and foremost, and to coordinate among the many agencies that have responsibility for it, as well as to develop new tools to take care of the ocean.
You know, we look at the last 10 to 15 years, and we've seen U.S. policy always taking a hard look at what's good for corporate America and balancing that with what's good for the rest of America. And I would imagine you're fighting that same battle as you look to try to keep the oceans and the coastlines clean. At the same time, you've got oil companies and power companies looking to use the coastline for other things.
Right. Well, one thing that defines the coast and the ocean is that everybody wants to be there and everybody wants a piece of the action. So the ability and the process to develop a coastal policy, a national ocean policy, is really very tied up with bringing all these stakeholders together, but making sure that the public's interest it wins out at the end of the day, that the fact that the ocean and the coast are a public trust becomes the foremost policy of the country, and that plays out in the laws and the approaches that our agencies use to make that policy real. You
know, years ago you had Exxon, big disaster. There was a lot of attention to waterways, kind of went away. And now BP, we've had a couple years ago. Do you see policy changing as a result of that?
Well, I think the nation's attention very much has been focused on the Gulf and the threats that are posed by offshore oil spills. Unfortunately, Congress has lagged behind. There were no real significant changes made to the way we govern oil and gas development in the ocean. In fact, there are now proposals to go into the Arctic and other equally sensitive areas without a whole lot of new tools. The National Ocean Policy is trying to create some momentum to addressing those kinds of challenges, to make sure that those issues are addressed and that the health and the protection of the ocean are first and foremost.
Are you seeing a reception to what you're bringing to the table?
Well, what we see is, again, the people that are on the beach, that use the water, whose livelihoods are most directly connected to it, are very supportive. They recognize the need to be more protective of the ocean. Businesses lag behind, unfortunately, and our legislative leaders have lagged behind, have not really taken up the mantra to make sure that this national ocean policy is a reality.
You know, years ago, maybe 20-something years ago, they had that really popular commercial with the Indian chief on the course of the river looking at the pollution. That was very effective. Do you get a sense you need something else like that to get people to wake up and say, hey, we've got to do something?
It'd be nice to have one image that captured the complexity of the ocean the way that that image did. I think when people saw the fishermen in the Gulf who were out of work, who were trying to spend their time cleaning up the damage to their coastline, people understood how this affects real lives. When we look at jobs of watermen who fish, who collect oysters, are out of work because of water pollution, when surfers and fishermen can't go to the beach because medical waste has washed out of New York City onto the beaches of New Jersey, we get it. We don't have one image like that, but we do have a process, and we do have an opportunity for the public and for individuals to join in this effort to take better care of the ocean.
So give us a few tips. What can the average person do? It's simply in the act of going to the beach to promote a healthier ocean and waterway.
Well, I think on an individual level, take part in a beach cleanup. Every year, all across the country, people get out and they pick up the trash off the beach. It gives you an opportunity to see it and to learn things. Become part of a community-based restoration program. There are groups all over the country who lead efforts to replant salt marshes, to rebuild oyster reefs, to let fish go over dams. And then lastly, be an active member of our democracy in this country and call Congress and tell them we need to do better. We need to have a national ocean policy that protects and prioritizes the ocean and the coast.
All right, Tim Dillingham with the American Littoral Society. Thanks for coming back and joining us. And this is a subject we can always tackle again on another day.
Well, thanks, Brian. I appreciate it.
All right.